All right.
Okay.
All right. Greetings and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast, where we talk about cult films that we love. Today, each week, one of us selects a film. This week, it was my turn, and I selected House of Games, written and directed by David Mamet, starring Lindsay Crouse and Joe Mantegna and Ricky Jay. And this is a film that I've recently fallen in love with. I got kind of deep into David Mamet rabbit hole several years ago, and then during the pandemic, I watched almost every movie that he's ever made. And this is the first film that he wrote and directed that he did the writing and the directing of. He's mostly, I think most people think of him as a writer, but he's actually quite an incredible director. And I just love this film because it just hits every note for me. It deals with deception and it's basically a film about the con game. And this is one of those films I don't want to do too much of a synopsis on, not only because it's like you can't really give a synopsis of this film without completely spoiling it, but also just because there's a lot of detail in this film. It's an incredibly detailed story. So if I'm trying to pitch to you right now, if you haven't seen this, why you should go see it, it's a really fantastic mind fuck of a movie, really well acted. And what you get in a film like this is a real master of narrative, a real master of storytelling and theater, who clearly he put everything into this knowing that you can tell he was really trying to prove himself as a director in his debut in this film. They put a lot of time and energy and detail into getting everything just right. So what you have is a film that, to me, my mind, has just a perfect vibe to it. And everything just fits together so nicely, whether it's the photography is incredible, the music, the acting, everything fits so nicely, and the ensemble is really well rehearsed. They did a lot of they really workshopped this a lot before they started rolling the cameras. And that's all I got for you guys. Just go see this film if you haven't. 1987. And I'm going to kick it off to Dan and Seth. I want to hear what they have to say about this film.
Well, I want to mention that the story is he collaborated with Jonathan Katz on this, who I know best from Dr. Katz from Adult Swim back in the day, where Ray Romano and Louis C.K. and some other comedians would be on Dr. Katz's couch. And but there's no fat on this script. Like, it's a lean machine. If they use something, it's there with a purpose. It's a real Chekhov's rifle. Like, if you see the gun on the wall, the gun will be taken off the wall and the gun will be shot at some point. And I'm thinking about the gold lighter.
Everything about this film is unbelievably deliberate.
It's deliberate. It will be used. There's no fat. There's no flab on this film. Like, everything is used.
It sort of has to be that way when it's an entire film about a long con. Like, you have the concept of the short con and the long con, and
But even the short con that you think it is actually it's all
part of the whole
part
con.
Of a longer.
But the point that I'm making is that in order for a con to work in real life, it has to be exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Every detail has to be measured perfectly, and all the more so when you have to depict it in film, and you're also bringing the audience along, and you want the audience. I mean, it's so tight. There's so few little flaws. Like, I can barely even find any flaws in it in terms of that didn't really make sense. But it's incredibly hard to do that, to make a film about a whole con where the main character is getting conned throughout the film. And also the audience is sort of getting conned in a way because they don't know what's happening yet. They get filled in like little by little, but you have to it has to be timed and paced in such a way that not too much is given away to the audience at the wrong time. And that's an incredibly masterful level of writing. That's really David Mamet at his best, you know.
Yeah. Have you read or heard about that book that the woman went and she interviewed con men in jail? Did I tell you about this
I would
book?
love to read that. That sounds like it's right up my alley.
So there's a book, and I think it's called Con Men, and she had to get away from them because she kept visiting them in prison, and she didn't realize that they were conning her into how they wanted her to write the book. Like, there was a certain point where she realized that she was visiting them more than she needed to and taking notes from them because they were manipulating her past the point that was necessary so they could have more say into getting information that was not true into what they do to people so their tricks wouldn't get out.
Right.
But one of the things that, and this is kind of in the movie, and I was thinking about it as we were talking about how perfect it is. At the end of the movie, you see why she's been picked as the perfect mark, which you don't really see at the beginning. Mm-hmm. One of the things this book tells you is they sell leads. Con men sell leads of people they've duped to other con men because it's really sick. 75% of the people who are duped will be duped again by other con men. Those are the good leads.
The good leads.
Glengarry Glen Ross.
So what's your clue? What clue are you alluding to that suggests that she's a good mark?
And she holds back on the pressure of having the pleasure of having the lighter, right? And she has the Freudian slip. She doesn't say pleasure. She says pressure. Mm. At the end, she steals a lighter.
Yeah.
Rather than buys one for herself after she's forgiven herself. So really, she's just someone who's always holding herself back. And her patient has figured this out about her by going into therapy with her.
And sells her into
the... Oh yeah, now we can reveal to
right.
Because anybody who's watching this has probably already seen it, but like,
yeah,
I mean, basically,
it's too bad if you saw this before you watched the movie. That's
but
really unfortunate.
Yeah,
because it's a lot of fun.
We haven't ruined anything until we're about to ruin it now. So
yeah, we're gonna ruin. Yeah, you just
I mean, I think the idea. I'm not quite understanding what Seth's getting at here yet.
What I'm saying is, let me go back to, because it's a link to Glengarry, is the good leads, just like in sales, for con men are people who have been conned before by con men. They keep track of it. And they sell those cons.
I know you already explained that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, what is it about her personality that's revealed? The fact that she holds back. Why does that make her a good mark?
Because if she wasn't living vicariously through others, if she was treating herself and not getting
she treats herself like an abstraction.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I get that. And also I think what it is that I think what he's trying to say, and he explains this a little bit, is that the ultimate she's participating in the ultimate con, and that's actually written into the script early on with her patient who's part of the whole con.
Yeah.
He's accusing her of being a con artist. Like, lady, this isn't real. This is all talk. This doesn't do anything. And people in therapy, especially Freudian psychoanalysis, they kind of like the thing that people get duped into is this like thing that if you say the right thing, the magic phrase, like, you'll eventually get cured. And it's an accumulation of saying the right things, hearing the right things, and saying the right things. And then eventually there's like a magic like spell that you'll say that will fix all of the things when you get the right associations or whatever. And I think that like David Mamet is trying to say that he thinks that psychiatry and psychology on some level is a con. But the thing about it is, if you're, I think to your point, Seth, if you're participating in a con and you don't even realize that you're a con artist, like what we would consider the true believing cult leader who maybe has an inkling that they're full of shit, but like that compartment of their brain doesn't allow them to see that they're full of shit. They don't actually see themselves in the mirror, and they believe in themselves. They believe in the con. Those people, I think maybe on some level, those people are the best kind of marks because they're able to con themselves. Like they're doing the con on themselves. So if you can dupe yourself, you're that much easier to be duped by somebody else.
Yeah, I think once like L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parson were doing it back and forth on each other,
right?
It was who's zooming who. You know, it's like at that point, it's like, oh, I was pretending to be hypnotized by you so I could steal your wife. So you know, like, oh, I was pretending, you know, like at that point, it's like, who knows? Like they're both nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I think a lot, and I think the same goes for a Sigmund Freud and a Carl Jung. I mean, they were experimenting and playing games and doing hypnosis and this and that, and they discovered like, oh, you know, I figured it out. The whole premise was wrong. Like they think that, like in psychology, they think that like sex is the driving force behind, like, you know, the libido is like everything, and like the orgasm, like they've created like a house of cards because like people are not motivated, you know, by fundamentally by sexuality. They're fundamentally motivated by survival, and sexuality is a component of that. But like, I don't think that, like, I think they became obsessed with, you know, it almost became like their own fetishes. They started creating, you know, you had what's his name with the orgons and the,
oh yeah,
I mean, it's like they
Wilhelm Reich.
Yeah, they become fixated on fetishes and abstractions, and I think that's where when you get further and further away of the fundamental building blocks of what like constitutes civilization and human priorities and things like that, you get into this weird shit where she's talking about like doing free association. The girl who's like this psycho killer girl that she meets in the, you know, in the ward, and the girl's like, you know, she's like I'm a lurg, and like lurg, it's girl spelled back. Like I had a session, I remember being in psychoanalysis once where the therapist was like, I was like, yeah, I had a dream about, like, you know, there were like insects everywhere, and he's like, insect? That's interesting. It sounds a lot like incest. And as you know, like that's what he was looking for, because that's part of their religion already. The religion is that you want to sleep with your mother and kill your father. So he's looking for incest. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what my subconscious was doing. That's like, and if I had never heard of that paradigm, or it was, you know, that wasn't operating, I would have never made that association. They invented that shit. So like, I think that that's what he's kind of trying to get at here. And that, like, you know,
it's also interesting to note that at the end, when she's taking him out, she is just so cold and saying the text like she's hysterical.
Oh,
He's screaming at her with these total accusatory statements, but he sounds hysterical. Like the roles are totally reversed.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, and I've toyed with that a bit. I'm like, is she the hero? Is she a hero? And the problem that I have, the only problem that I have with the film, and maybe it's not a problem, maybe that it's actually what it makes it even better, but it's like she's kind of justified in killing him, I think. Why not? You know,
for $80,000?
No, not because of the money, because of what he put her through, and what a bunch of scumbags these people are. And like, these are the kinds of things that like people will kill themselves over. Like, you know, it's it's almost like, and you know what? I think she would have spared him if he had begged her. If he had begged for his life, I think she would have spared him. She wanted actual contrition from him. She wanted like an actual, like, show me that you're a human being who actually gives a shit. Like, how can you just do this to people? Maybe I'm not helping people. Maybe I'm as a psychiatrist not helping people. Well, at least my intentions are good. And that counts for something. Your intentions are awful. You're a bad man and you don't feel the least bit of remorse about it. So I want you to beg for your life. I want you to humiliate yourself the way you humiliated me. And he would not even give her the satisfaction of humiliating himself because he had too much pride. And that's why she did it. That's kind of how I interpret it. Is
it the pride or is it the frog and the scorpion thing? It's just, look, it's my nature. Like, I don't do that. This is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's in her nature to be like, you know, for her reputation and her, I mean, I know there is an ego aspect to it, of course.
And then this also comes down to Mamet. Like, it can't just be a heist scam film. It has to be men and women too.
And it also has to be some deeper meaning about like the depths of the human soul. Like it goes,
and
you know,
do you mean
sorry, Dan.
Sorry, when you say she's almost justified in killing him, do you mean to say that the real violation was making her feel that he wanted her and then they sleep together, which she called a rape?
Which is preposterous.
Which is preposterous.
But no, it's not that.
No, but you're saying it's an emotion. She becomes
Dan,
emotional.
I want you to consider for a second that some guy comes along, you know, he hires you for a job, some kind of film thing that you're doing for him.
I totally understand where you're going with
and
this.
now he creates a whole organization of people that have concocted this scheme to basically steal a part of your soul away from you.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, completely at your expense. Right. And it's like, you know, I think those types of that's like almost like a spiritual violence. That's like something that goes beyond. That's like metaphysical crime right there. That's what I'm saying. Like they committed a metaphysical crime against her, against her soul.
No, that's an interesting take.
Yeah,
it's an interesting take. I actually was looking forward to hoping that Judy would be here because I really wanted to hear the female perspective on this.
I know.
I think he's saying something though about the female perspective of they always want to go on some adventure, right? There's always some romance novel of like, get me out of my office.
Well, yes, women are attracted to sociopaths. Like they've done, you know, studies that like Jordan Peterson talks about this. How like
I know the
men that women.
It's vampires,
werewolves,
billionaires, surgeons,
and number one, pirates.
And pirates.
Number one is the pirate, and there's a very rational reason. There's a very rational reason for that. There's a man who's willing to be a man who is willing to do whatever it takes, and who's like that much of a savage, is going to probably have a good chance in like a dog eat dog kind of scenario of surviving and protecting. A guy that's that savage, he's not going to let the tribe perish. He's going to dominate the opposition. And, you know, if you're a woman and you're vulnerable, you're going to want to be with a man who can dominate the opposition. And those guys oftentimes are psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever the hell. So it's a very, very primal urge, you know? And and clearly, like, she's completely seduced by the fact that this guy's like, she wants to learn everything about him once she finds out that he's a con artist. Not realizing that that's part of the long con, right? That's the fucking beauty of this whole thing. It's like she is so fat. Like they let her into to their world, and they're like, "Sorry, we almost had you." And they gain her confidence. They make her feel like she's actually smarter than the average mark because they fuck up the con, but they did it on purpose. To make her feel.
And even the tricks they show her is like some like.
Oh, it's some basic.
It's some like basic $20 book.
It's like that's like a 19th century con right there with the dollar bill thing.
Unfortunately, the real giveaway is when you think about the fact that the cop, as you know, pretending to be the businessman at that convention is a mark, you all of a sudden go, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. She's got to be the mark, and that was theater, because there's no way that they picked up a cop. That's too random. That's where I kind of knew.
No,
that
okay. So the way, that's
I'm just
true.
saying, for me as an audience
No.
person,
That's good. That's good. I have
realized at that moment. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No. That's good. I have two responses. I have two
What?
responses to that. Number
Well,
one.
I just want to be clear what I'm saying. I realized at that moment she was the mark.
Yes, I understand.
He was in the bathroom talking on the walkie-talkie because it made no sense, you know.
Okay.
And so,
I have two responses to that. I think one, it does make sense, and two, that's the moment I think where
so it makes sense
they
intended.
No, that's not what I mean, bro. I'm saying I think they intended. I think in the writing, it was intended that at that moment, some of the audience would really start to pick up on her potentially being the mark, because it's very close, right? And at that point, if people realize that she's the mark, then they start to get like, it starts to become suspenseful in a different way. It's still very interesting. It's still exciting. It doesn't ruin it. And then for the audience members that don't get it right away, then it's still very interesting, right? So now, and the other thing is that just from a structural storytelling standpoint, the way that it's somewhat plausible or like could make sense is that, okay, these guys are professional con artists. They've been running these kinds of schemes for a long time, and they have some undercover guys that have been like tapping their phones or whatever, trying to find out shit about them, then been watching them, and some undercover guy is doing a sting operation. Like, it's plausible.
Of course it's justifiable. What I'm saying is that that's the moment where I, as an audience, go, huh.
Right. But even at that moment, then, right. Okay. Even at that moment, then it's still complex and confusing enough of a situation that it doesn't ruin it, because you don't know what the con is yet. You still don't know. You know that there's something, but you don't know what it is.
I'm not saying it makes the film weaker. The other thing I would note, I would note is that when you see JT Walsh with those guys, he fits like a glove. You know, he's like,
I know.
JT Walsh is just as sleazy as the rest of them. That you're like, you kind of go, he's a buddy. He's got to be in on it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you know, anyway, no, it's a very good script. It's a really good movie. In a way, Mamet's methodology in terms of directing actors works very well for this plot. In a way, I don't think a lot of his directing works for other scripts that he's written.
I can see that.
I would agree.
Give me an example. Like, are you thinking like The Spanish Prisoner, or
because Mamet's methodology of theater works very well in terms of the behavior of these specific con men. You know what I'm saying? Like, it actually works.
Are you saying that this would translate well to the stage?
There's a metaphor. There's a parallel between poker and con men in theater.
Okay.
You know, these guys are putting on a play.
There's a by the numbers, keep it sharp, stick to your basics.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Exactly right.
Just like we rehearsed it in the park. Okay,
that's right. Say the lines. Don't make it clean.
Yeah, don't
add anything. No vulnerability. Just deliver the information. And the theater aspect of it, you know, makes you really buy everything that they're doing in a way that sometimes you watch Mamet films and you're aware of the Mamet technique, whereas here it's built into the story very well. The only thing that I would say bothers me sometimes about his directing is that when you get to the intimate moments or the moments where there is vulnerability, it's kind of, you know, but again, I'm coming from a theater and film background, and I'm aware of that stuff. Like when they're intimate in the, you know, you can kind of feel David Mamet going, okay, don't kiss my wife that long.
Yeah.
I forgive it here because I think that there's a pathology to these characters.
Yeah.
That I find it forgivable. Like I buy it, but I also know, because it's David Mamet, that as I get to know them more and more, it's probably don't kiss my wife that long and things like that. But I can project over it.
For the record, I did steal that from Joe Mantegna. He talked about the awkwardness of doing that scene.
Yeah, every time I've watched that scene, I'm just like, man, how can he direct that? Like, oof.
No, it's fine. They were great. They're terrific. I'm just saying that sometimes the way the dialogue is delivered in Mamet's films, you wish sometimes that they would find other levels in terms of intimacy within some of those moments, you know. But it's just like it's the way he does stuff.
She wanted it played a little bit hotter.
Yeah, even the violence at the end, though, I felt was very clean and like Mamet.
You know, it was almost like very old school Hollywood in a way. It kind of reminded me almost like the way it was shot, the angles of the camera.
It's considered a neo-noir.
Well, it's like a neo-noir, but it almost reminded me of like Cagney or like some kind of old gangster film.
The difference is the actors in Billy Wilder or a Howard Hawks. There's a little bit more irony and spin in some of the dialogue, whereas Mamet's like no irony, no spin, just say the words.
Right?
But they're such wonderful actors that it just works. You don't. It's not like you doubt a moment.
Yeah.
But
this is 87.
Yes.
It feels like so many of the films that came out after this were just trying to do this.
Yeah.
Into like 92.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those films that a lot of people, like when it came out, like all the critics were raving about it. It didn't get huge numbers in the box office. There's probably a lot of good reasons for that. I'm sure there were a lot of blockbusters that overshadowed it. But I feel like it's one of those films that like all of these other filmmakers are like, wow, I bet I could rip this film off and nobody will notice because it's not that popular of a film.
I feel like
because it's the best one of its kind, in my opinion. Like I know there's other movies like this. I've never seen one this
David
good.
Chase must love this film.
Yeah,
those two writers who wrote Rounders obviously must have seen it several times.
Yeah,
what are those? I can't. Brian Koppelman and I can't remember.
Which is a fantastic film, by the way.
That's a very good movie.
Rounders is a great movie. The interesting thing about Rounders, though, that's different than this, is the cards that come up in the plays and Rounders are not exceptional hands. They're not like poker movie hands.
Oh,
you don't
okay.
see like straight flushes and like
because that doesn't happen in real life unless the dealer's cheating.
Yeah. So like you in Rounders, I can't remember what the best hand is of all the but they're real
they're plausible hands. Yeah. They made an effort to do that. They consulted with a lot of good guys.
That's very much a poker movie, whereas this movie has one big poker scene.
Yeah.
Which is when Ricky Jay.
I love, but so there's certain scenes in this film which really they're shot in such a way and written in such a way it really just feels like time is stopping, and that poker scene is one of them.
Great, it was great.
It's like time just stops and it's frozen, and the tension is so perfect. And then the other scene that I think maybe one of my favorite scenes of all time, just in terms of the writing and the shot and the lighting and just everything about it. Do you guys know which scene I'm thinking of? It's the big reveal. It's when she sneaks up and she's the bar and she's peering. She's peering through the spaces in these old tavern, the benches in an old tavern around the tables.
Yeah.
And like she's witnessing the veil. The veil is coming off, and it's just like she's seeing these guys as they are in their environment, like
slamming her.
And they're saying all this hard. It's like the absolute worst way that you could find out.
It's a woman's nightmare of what men say about
the
them.
guy. Yeah, the guy's saying, yeah. They're like, "Did you sleep with her?" He's like, "Yeah, I had to." It's like I took one for the team. Like he was just basically saying, like, what I didn't even want to. Like, she wasn't even attractive enough that I would have ever even.
You see the fifth guy in their crew who you don't see throughout the movie. The black dude. there, you know.
Well, no, you do see him in the movie. He's the
Oh,
guy
you do
who
earlier,
drops
yeah,
the
yeah.
keys. He's the guy who rented the hotel
right.
room.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and so yeah, I like. There's a lot of details in this film that, like, because I've seen it like a gazillion times, I have the whole thing kind of ironed out. Like, the more I've watched this film, the more blown away I am with how tight all of the details are. But one of the characters I wanted to mention is Stephen Goldstein's character. This guy is like a really good actor that nobody talks about. He plays Billy Hahn, the kid.
Yes.
And I think he's one of the most exceptional actors that I can think of that's like really not well known, because I've never seen anybody be able to make Mamet's lines sound as natural as he does. He really does it smoothly, and like he has a certain pathos, and he's part of this whole con, but
I'm just looking up what else he's in.
yeah, he doesn't even.
He's written as the vulnerable case,
and he does exactly,
yeah.
and he does the whole vulnerable thing really well.
Mamet's dudes are always poker.
Well, he's
dudes.
also another ensemble guy. Like, he's been in a lot of Mamet films with other actors.
Right.
He was in that film, I forget the name of it, where Joe Mantegna plays the Jewish cop, and there's like some like weird. I don't even remember what Homicide.
Right?
Yeah,
Homicide.
Dude, I love that movie. I can never remember what it's about. I know there's like a Zionist thing going on, and like some underground thing. But
it's him getting obsessed with an anti-Semitic plot.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't even remember all the details. But Billy Hahn is in that one. He plays like a Torah scholar who
yes.
He has a cameo, like not a cameo, but it's like a small like.
Mantegna's played a lot of Jews, actually.
Yeah,
Liberty Heights. Him and
listen, Jews and Italians, we have a history that goes back, 2,500 years with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have a bit of an understanding. I think Jews can do, James Caan can play Sonny Corleone.
A lot of poker games.
A lot of poker games together. We actually, the Jewish mob and the Italian mob, like, kind of invented modern gangsterism.
Yes.
It's
funny because I think the shorthand between Mantegna and Mamet come from their working class Chicago roots.
Yeah, for sure.
Growing up in similar environments that
which is funny.
I'm sorry. He innately understands exactly what David Mamet is writing about.
Oh, he's a Jersey guy.
Who is?
Matawan, New Jersey, class of 19.
Are we talking about Stephen Goldstein?
No, I was saying Mantegna.
No, I'm just trying to pivot real quick.
Yeah.
Goldstein?
He was born in 1963 in Matawan, New Jersey.
Nice. Sorry, Dan, what were you saying?
Yeah. And Ricky Jay's a Jersey guy.
Yeah.
Ricky Jay's from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
And Ricky Jay, if people don't know, they've been living under a rock. I mean, he just passed away recently, but Ricky Jay is one of the most important, like, magic historians and an incredible magician in his own right. And he did a lot of he was not only like a star in this film, but he was also like a consultant. So if you go to the, I have the Criterion DVD.
Mantegna talked about
it. You didn't watch the commentary, but the commentary, the official commentary of the director's cut or whatever, or the Criterion Collection version, has basically Ricky Jay and Mamet talking together, like doing the whole commentary together throughout the whole film, and it's just very interesting. And again, I wanted to bring that up also because, like, you could see, like, this was kind of like, I think for a lot of for Mamet, this was almost kind of like having like a first baby in a way, being the writer and first director and writer, and you just like put so much care into it, and they were very like forthcoming about the whole process and everything that went into it, and completely transparent. So if you do get a chance to get the original, to get the Criterion DVD with the commentary with Ricky Jay and David Mamet, it's very interesting.
Check it out.
Yeah, but
he's worked mostly with David Mamet.
What's that?
He's worked mostly with David Mamet.
Yeah, and that's probably why he doesn't have a huge
we talking
He
about
doesn't have a
Mantegna?
Wicca. No, we're talking. He's going back to Stephen Goldstein.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, he doesn't have a huge presence like on the internet. Like he's not on. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. But he's a very fine actor. I don't know what else has he been in that's not David Mamet.
He's in a comedy romance called The Night We Never Met, with Matthew Broderick, Jean Triplehorn, Annabella Sciarra, Kevin Anderson, Brooke Smith, who I know, Louise Lasser, the first Mrs. Woody Allen.
The first Mrs. Woody Allen, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Louis Lasser was Woody Allen's
He's the
second.
third cheese man.
Yeah.
So he doesn't. That's a role that I would like play. I think I'm fourth cheese man in that movie. I wasn't in that movie. I'm going to be a bodega clerk on Monday.
Yeah.
In Ari Tobbs.
So featured extra work, or you have lines?
Well, basically, Ari Tobb was a camp counselor for one of my friends' little brothers in the 90s at a film camp. And he's worked his way finally to actually being a producer and having a production company. And a pretty significant director in Holland is making a movie in Brooklyn. And Ari's company is producing it. And he just wrote on Facebook, if any of my friends want to do cameos in this. So I wrote to him and I said, yeah, I do it. And then his assistant wrote back to me and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I thought it was SAG. And she wrote back to me and said, oh, yeah, for you, it's SAG. Don't worry about it. Ari says it's fine. So, yeah.
Nice. Mazel tov, Seth.
Yeah.
Great.
Get to be a bodega clerk.
Nice.
Which I've never been a bodega clerk. So that happy to be a bodega clerk.
The conversational bodega clerk. The one who has the...
Look, so long as I don't have to cut my hair and beard and I can just sort of be like, look like I'm like smoking a lot of weed or like, you know, some funny, like
what kind of a bodega is it? Is it an Italian bodega?
It's
a
an
Russian
ozone
bodega?
park.
It's an ozone park. Oh, nice.
I think it's a kind of a sci-fi. It's called I'll have to look up what the name of this thing is called again. Hold a second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So, any other points of interest? Oh yeah, our friend William H. Macy's in this film.
That's right.
As well.
Great. Actually, an excellent part. That was a very good scene.
It's a very short role, but and I almost like wonder was he acting or was that real? Could he have been part of?
He could have been in on
it. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I only got that insight this time, but they don't show him later in the film.
He wants to give him the money, and then Mantegna just walks out and says, "You see, people will give you their money."
It's
but
either
he doesn't shoot after them, which
if
exactly. If wanted to give you their money, they would come after. No, I insist.
I mean, right, and so that's a lot. Like that's a lot of detail to like nitpick over. Only somebody that's involved in filmmaking would like pick up on that the way that you did. But like, I mean, the only reason I think that it's unlikely is that was the intention for us to believe that he was in on the whole thing the whole time, is because they never show him at the big reveal party that takes place.
Yeah, he's not
at the end of towards the end of Act 3, and
I think
he's not
really
there. So that was
he really was a broke vet,
right? So that was his demonstration of high level con game skill. He's trying to show her.
Oh wow!
This is part of her research for her supposed. She's going to write a book about the con and everything, and. He was just trying to demonstrate his prowess. But
this movie that I'm going to be doing is a police drama called First Shift, and it is actually about Elliot Ness. So the link is back to Mamet. because Mamet wrote Untouchables.
Oh, the Untouchables, yeah.
But he's it's directed by Uwe Ball, who directed House of the Dead 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought Ari Taub was directing it.
Ari Taub is producing it.
Oh, okay.
I saw recently I watched The Untouchables again, and I was very disappointed. Not because it's a bad movie. It's a great movie, and the writing's great and the acting's great. But I was just disappointed because I was like thinking like Elliot Ness is just not that interesting of a protagonist. I want to see more of the bad guy, you know? Like every time Robert De Niro was on camera playing Al Capone, I was just like, there's not enough Al Capone in this movie, you know?
Yeah.
But
well, that's a very expensive Robert De Niro performance, I hear.
Yes, it was.
He deserved every penny.
But Bob Hoskins got a check just for doing the screen test.
Yes. He said, I'd be happy to take checks like that for everything.
I wonder what kind of a payday Mamet got for writing that. Like
pretty good. It was that's a big studio movie,
but like okay, so yeah, how do they get like options based on how well the film does as well? Like if somebody writes a screenplay and the film makes like $1 gazillion, like do they?
I think Mamet's whole MO in that era and probably even into the 90s was, you know, I'll give them my play, the Pulitzer Prize winner, and I'll write one for them. But if I do my movies, I use my crew, you know. When he basically optioned Glenn Ross, according to Joe Mantegna, he goes backstage and says, Joe just won the Tony for playing Ricky Roma. And Mamet goes, you know, like typical Mamet, blunt as can be, you know, Joe, I sold Glenn Ross the movie rights. They want Pacino. Sorry. But I wrote two screenplays.
I don't think there would have been any hard feelings about that on Joe Mantegna's part.
Of course, but the way he was just very blunt. But I have two screenplays, and this is mine, and this is for you. So I think Mamet was always one of those guys who would, you know, I think The Untouchables and selling the rights to Glenn Ross or The Verdict or whatever. That was the money. That was the paycheck. House of Games and Spanish Prisoner and et cetera, et cetera. I get to pick who I wanna. This is my company now. You don't touch this.
And I love that because there's just not a lot of that.
John Sayles is another example of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, can you name some of his most famous films?
I
don't know how familiar.
Men with Guns.
Yeah. What's the famous baseball movie with Charlie Sheen and oh God, about
Major League?
About the Black Sox. I'm not Charlie Sheen. I think Charlie Sheen was in that one too.
No, Charlie Sheen was in Major League. Are you thinking of Field of Dreams?
No. The film that John Sayles made about the 1918 Black Sox.
Oh yeah.
I think that. Yeah, that was his biggest film. But he made a lot of independent movies that.
And he made Alligator, Wolfen, and
8 Men Out.
Piranha.
8 Men Out with Charlie Sheen and John Cusack. Lone Star with I think Matthew McConaughey. And a friend of mine, Leo Burmeister, did a lot of his movies. Passion Fish, Brother from Another Planet, Secret of Roan Inish. But anyway, his whole thing was he would ghostwrite screenplays for big studio pictures, and then, you know, do his.
Wait,
movies.
can we talk about Mike Nussbaum? Because I really don't know anything about him. That's the older gentleman who's participating in the con, the other star. Do you guys know anything about him?
He's been in a lot of movies in that era.
I feel like I knew him.
And let me add, he's still alive. He's 99 years old.
Yeah. You mentioned Field of Dreams. He's actually in that.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, like I'm looking at this filmography. He's still working. I guess he did he did a movie in 2020 called The Time of Your Life, where it looks like he plays a priest.
Time of Your Life? Like Time of Your Life?
No, Tom.
He's in Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the principal in Field of Dreams.
He's in
Gladiator,
Fatal Attraction. He's in
1992.
Men in Black.
He
Gentle
really
Rose.
does-
Yeah, that's right.
He really digs into the misogynist dialogue, you know. With the,
Yeah.
He did national commercials for United Airlines and Scope mouthwash back in the day.
Yeah.
he has a very unique demeanor and voice, and
Dude, he was
He's sort
in
of like
Harry and Tonto.
he's
in
like a midwestern.
1974.
He's like a midwestern gentleman. That's his.
Well,
whole,
so he also grew up in Chicago, and he's a
Right.
Jewish guy, you know. So
Yeah.
he's got that. Yeah, he grew up in the Albany Park area of Chicago. He was in the he served in the military during World War II.
Okay, so he's up there.
We dedicate this episode to Mike Nussbaum. Shout out to you, brother.
Yeah. And Michael Hausman, is he still alive?
Michael Hausman.
I wonder if Michael Hausman is still alive. Michael Hausman was the producer.
Yeah. Not sure.
Was one of the co-founders of Columbia Film School.
Okay. Wait, so is he around the same age as Mamet, or is he older?
Oh, I believe older.
He's probably older, right? Yeah. When did they found that school?
The late 80s, I believe.
Okay.
The Atlantic? You mean Mammoth School?
No, he's
No,
talking about the Columbia.
Michael
Oh,
Hausman was
okay.
the producer of this movie.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't find information about him so readily. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. There's a Michael Hausman who's a famous musician. He keeps popping up.
1935. He's a good 12 years older than Mamet.
Yeah.
There's an IMDb page for him.
Oh, okay. When in doubt, that's where you
executive
go.
producer for Amadeus, Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, he produced Amadeus.
Executive producer. Nobody's Fool. Gangs of New York. Man on the Moon. Twilight.
Oh, he produced Man on the Moon.
Dude,
Yeah.
Michael Nussbaum does 50 push-ups a day.
Still?
At least he was when he was 91 years old.
Wow.
That's
According
good.
to ChicagoMagazine.com.
It's a healthy exercise.
That's pretty wild. Like, he doesn't strike me as such an athletic guy. It may be that kind of crouching posture that he has. It's part of his shtick with the.
He's
with the
5
pipe,
foot
but-
Yeah.
2 inches, and he
Yeah,
used
he's
to
a
be
small
5'7", but scoliosis took a couple of inches.
I'd say, yeah. Wow, 5.
Wow.
That's a lot. Yeah, no, that's what I noticed. I actually noticed like his scoliotic curve in the film because that's another thing I do for a living is analyze people's posture and gait.
Right.
But yeah, I know. Like when you said 50 push-ups, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive for a guy with the kind of slumped posture that he had. But I guess it's real. Good for him, man. 99, and
That's impressive.
and he's still working. It seems like at least he was 3 years ago.
Not everybody gets to do the George Burns run.
No.
Or who was Jessica Tandy's husband, Hume Cronin.
Jim Cronin.
Yeah, he lived a long time.
He lived in a building next door to her. Did you know that?
He didn't live with Jessica Tandy?
They lived in buildings next to each other.
Well, listen, everybody has a different way of doing marriage.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I think, he would
Keep it fresh.
keep it fresh, like go take, they
So
lived in separate
Are we
buildings
still
next to each other.
live? Are we live?
yeah, we're still live, and I think it's like winding down at this point.
Everybody
So
can watch this podcast if you want to go to
hey,
sleep.
we can talk about whatever the hell we want. What, Dan? You didn't think I would say something if we're?
No, I just didn't know we were
All right,
still live.
let's have some closing arguments here.
Well, what do you mean? What are we arguing? If this
No
is
arguing. Just tell me, like, we're about to end the show, guys, and I
think
want to see if
think it's a
Dan
really
and Seth
great-
have some final remarks.
tight, small. Like, it's not an epic movie, but it's a tight little story. It's really well put together. You can if you're a filmmaker, you got a lot to learn from, especially if you're a writer.
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to think about your phone bill the entire time you're watching it. Yeah.
Yeah. I concur. Wonderful actors, tight script. I think he made good choices as a director. I think the choices he made as a director work for the material very well. And Seattle looks great on film.
It really does,
always
especially
does.
at night in the rain.
Yeah, it's just I'm not crazy about the modern architecture, but those old sort of slummy buildings and
It really looks
19
seedy, and I've been
Yeah.
there before, and I don't remember like what it looked like. So when I first saw this film, I've never been to Chicago. I just assumed that it was taking place in Chicago,
No.
and I was just like, "Oh, Seattle, okay."
Oh, it's Seattle?
And
Seattle.
and I was just like wondering why'd they pick Seattle?
Well,
of
because
all
I think
places?
Seattle is the closest city to Los Angeles that gives you that Chicago grit feel.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Have
I
you
think
spent a
that
lot of
must be
time out
it.
there?
What is that?
Have you spent a lot of time out there?
I
in
lived there as a
Seattle?
child. I lived in California, but
No, in
you're not
Seattle.
going to quite get that in San Francisco. San Francisco is very pretty. I mean, San Francisco has a lot of
but Dan, I'm asking you, have you spent time in Seattle?
as a child.
Oh, so
But
you lived in,
I remember being there. Yeah.
oh, so you lived in Seattle as a child. I thought you said
No, I lived in
California.
Los Angeles.
Oh,
as a
okay.
child.
Okay,
So
got
Yeah,
you
it.
want
we
to
were
see? So these are the streets that like Kurt Cobain is bumming around.
I guess
Right.
so.
Yeah,
This is like right around the time that he was getting his start in the music industry.
Yeah.
One thing I would mention before we close, the music is fantastic. I'm a music guy. Alaric Jans, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is he's the composer. Does a lot of film and theater. I thought the music was super tight, and then the choice of the Bach fugue in the beginning and the opening and closing credits, that was to me like really nice bookends for the film.
And the photography is very good.
Of course.
The gentleman's name is, I think he's Spanish.
Yeah,
I'd
Juan Ruiz Anchia.
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
And I might have seen his work, and I wasn't aware of his.
Yeah, he's done. I don't know. He did Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh wow, with
Yeah.
James Foley. Interesting.
Yeah.
He did a great job with that too. That was a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah, he shot Glengarry Glen Ross. That makes sense because stylistically, there's a lot of similarities,
Sure.
and clearly, he really likes he likes wet pavement at night a lot. He's really into shooting.
It's
but who
beautiful.
doesn't like that, right? I
It's
mean,
beautiful.
yeah. Spartan.
Yeah, Spartan was a
David
mammoth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did a little bit of TV, I guess. Oh, he did the Phil Spector movie that I love.
Oh, I love that. What I've seen of it so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does sort of a modern take, color take on noir lighting.
Yeah.
But he doesn't bang it over the head, but he just it has a nice balance of gritty realism and noir style to it. He does it just the right amount.
And instead of like using fog that they would normally have in a typical film noir thing, instead of fog, it's steam coming out of the sewer.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Right.
Anyway, I think that's it for us, guys. We will see
right.
you next time. Peace
All
out.
right. Peace out.
And have a great night.